A major developing story that we've been following here on the Rundown for months. The once secret or even non-existent ties between Israel and the Gulf now warming up and going public. Back in June, an official from Bahrain told I-24 News that the kingdom would be the very first Gulf nation to establish diplomatic ties with Israel. And then came all the public visits. On October 26th, the Israeli Prime Minister at the Omani Royal Palace. Days later, Culture Minister Miri Regev in Abu Dhabi. The day after that, Communications Minister Ayub Kara in Dubai. And less than a week after that, Intelligence Minister Israel Katz in Oman. And just yesterday, Netanyahu came out promising more visits to Arab countries, he says, very soon. Well, joining us now from New York, someone who has developed close ties with Gulf leaders and seen some of that shift from the inside, Rabbi Marc Schneier. He's the founder and president of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding. Marc, great to have you here with us. So I want to ask you, first of all, about sort of where we are in this timeline. We hear so much sort of hints of normalization between Israel and Bahrain or with these other Gulf ties. Just how far off do you think normalization really is?
Well, back on March, on your network, I predicted that Bahrain would be the first of the 6 Gulf states, and that we would see the establishment of relations between Israel and Bahrain within a 2-year period. We're living in extraordinary times. There's a healthy competition among the Gulf states in terms of moving closer to Israel, whether it was the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia openly discussing Israel's right to exist back in April. We now see how Qatar and the Israelis are working very closely together on looking to resolve the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You mentioned before Minister Regev visiting the UAE and the playing of the Hatikva, the Prime Minister of Israel going to visit Amman. But I believe that Bahrain is quite distinctive. Since I have known His Majesty King Hamad, the ruler of Bahrain, since I first visited with him in the palace in December 2011. I have seen time and time again his many initiatives in looking forward to being closer with the State of Israel. He was the first ruler in the Arab Gulf to openly speak out against Iran between 2013 2015, he led the legislation of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization within the GCC. How many times have I heard from Bahraini leaders, why do we have diplomatic relations with Iran and not with Israel? Bahrain is the only Arab country in the Gulf to have an official Jewish community, and I can give you a litany of other examples why Bahrain deservedly and His Majesty have earned the right to be the first Gulf states to have relations with Israel.
Marc, well, so what I'm wondering, and what I think a lot of people here in the Middle East are wondering, is what sort of change? What made it happen? I mean, the sort of shared enemy that Israel and the Gulf have in Iran has been the case for a very long time. The peace process between Israelis and Palestinians has been at a standstill for a very long time. Why is this changing now?
Well, there are a number of contributing factors. He's just spoken about the existentialist threats from Iran that both the Gulf and Israel face. I have heard from many Gulf leaders the economic opportunities in terms of cooperation between the Gulf and Israel. I've heard from Gulf leaders, with our wealth and Israel's technology, this could be the most powerful region in the world. I've heard from Gulf leaders who are interested in cementing their relationships, not only with the United States, but particularly with the Trump administration, and they do see Israel as a conduit to that objective. And then you have a kingdom like Bahrain in terms of having a Jewish community and His Majesty's commitment not only to preserving and building his Jewish community, but to reaching out to the Jewish community world jury as well.
So, Mark, what is sort of left in the way? What is the obstacle that all these countries, that Israel, that Bahrain, that these other Gulf nations need to cross in order for that to happen?
I believe, first, it's a question of time. It's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. Secondly, we should not minimize what the Palestinian-Israeli conflict still means to these Gulf leaders. They do have a very strong commitment and solidarity with the Palestinian people. And therefore, as I've heard, a change in nuance. It used to be, Rabbi, let Israel and the Palestinians first resolve the conflict, and then we'll entertain the discussions on diplomatic relations. Today, I now hear, as long as Israel and the Palestinians are in discussion, simultaneously, parallel to those discussions, we can discuss establishing relations with Israel. But it behooves the Israelis, Palestinians, for that matter, it behooves all of us to see a resolution to this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians.
Mark, how are these countries looking at this White House, at President Donald Trump? He has come out as a staunch defender of Saudi Arabia and of the Gulf in general. Is that a factor in changing this relationship?
Tremendous factor. I find that the Gulf leaders today feel very, very secure with President Trump, with the United States of America, particularly when it comes to the existentialist threat coming from Iran. So you're living in extraordinary times. The State of Israel, Donald Trump, the 6 Gulf states coming together, moving closer to one another. It's truly, truly remarkable times, and we see that Gulf-Israel relations are moving in a very positive direction. Again, I entered this field, I pioneered this field some 12 years ago in terms of building Muslim-Jewish relations globally. As a result of being an interfaith leader and engaging with both political and religious leaders in the Gulf, typically my conversations do segue into discussions on bilateral relations between Israel and the Gulf.
Mark.
The fact that we have these discussions, we're living in remarkable times.
That is certainly the case, whichever way it ends up going. Mark, briefly, I know you can't give me a date, but what are we looking at? We've already heard Israeli media reporting this week that normalization between Israel and Bahrain is in the works. Are we going to see that in 2019, in your view?
I believe so. I would also look to delineate between the Prime Minister's recent visit to Oman and to Bahrain. I believe his visit to Oman was a benchmark event in terms of the visit itself. When it comes to Israel and Bahrain, I believe that Bahrain and Israel are there in terms of looking to establish diplomatic relations. I know of the king's convictions, other members of the foreign ministry in Bahrain, and we're living in some very extraordinary and remarkable times.
All right, Rabbi Marc Schneier in New York, thank you very much for being